What's up, YouTube? What's up, Extreme Gains family? I'm Chuck. This is Extreme Gains. I am not a financial advisor. Nothing I say is or ever will be financial advice. Please do not take it as such. Today is Monday, May 30th, Memorial Day 2022, and markets are closed today. This is my AMC, GME, and SPY Algo Exposed weekly update and preparation video for tomorrow and beyond. As always, I know it seems like forever ago. I hope you were able to make some extreme gains for yourselves on Friday. I'm going to go over all the regulars that I always go over, my snake algos for all three tickers, and some macro comparatives. So with that said, let's dig in. On your screen is AMC and my intra-week snake. AMC and the whole market pretty much went upside heavy on Friday. AMC was up an incredible 18% at market close at $14.43. GME was up almost 7%. SPY was up an incredible 2.45% just on Friday. Tons of opportunity to make gains. I hope you were able to do so. Like I always say, I truly mean that. I know I did. I had an incredible day on Friday. I know a lot of people in my premium had one. A lot of people in general had one. So I know I can speak for everybody in the Extreme Gains family, from the Discord family. We hope that you did as well. So on your screen, like I said, is my intra-week snake for AMC. It has projected and fulfilled 3 days now from Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday last week. It has given 100% projection and fulfillment of that projection going into now this week. AMC's on a tear here. GME's on a tear. Everything's on a tear. The whole market's on a tear to the upside. So if price action were to continue to fulfill this snake in its entirety, you can see what the projection would look like moving into tomorrow and this week. This does appear to expire on Thursday morning. So if it expires fulfilled, that is where I would be expecting potentially a new snake and diversion to be applied there. However, if it diverts prior to that, you all know the drill. I'll be clipping day of and day prior to if and when that happens. But that is what I am looking at and looking for from the current intra-week snake in its current position. The macro comparatives for AMC. The macro double-double from the macro descending wedge prior to the January 2021 run-up back here is clipped and on here. I have been tracking this almost every day since I started the channel back in December of last year. I had talked to you all last week about this potentially being in an inverted mirroring of this, whereas the projection from it was downside and price action literally mirrored the exact candle for candle movements, but to the upside. And if that were to be the case, my expectation going into last week would have been, if this were to follow it according to this, we would just see upside. And that is what we've seen. The same thing this week, y'all. Moving forward, I mean, this is in that place right now where if it's this and in this position, it's nothing but upside. So if the week continues to go heavy upside, this is one version that I am looking at for a bullish scenario. I am not ready to sing "This Is It" yet. And I'll be 100% transparent with you. You will hear me singing that song when and if we breach the upside resistance of this macro descending wedge that we have been in since the all-time high run-ups of last year, May and June. If and when we break that and give a confirmation retest and then continuation to upside, I will come on here and sing that song for y'all. I already told you that months ago. So that is when I will be buckling in for a ride to the upside, something like we've experienced in previous run-ups, hopefully. And if it were to continue to follow and fulfill this macro comparative in that way. Then for a potential bearish scenario and setup, I had previously been showing you this alternate bottom from over here because of how GME is fulfilling its previous next door bottom. And this was the bearish scenario in last week. And if it were to fulfill that, the rejection would have been around the 1250 area and then back downside. However, it breached that without hesitation to the upside. So what appears to be happening is potentially an invert mirroring of this now to the upside. So if that were to be what's happening, I can mirror this and I can pull it down here and put it on in its mirroring. And its mirroring would look something like that right there. So moving forward, if this were to mirror and continue to portray itself in an inverted mirroring of that downside in this upside manner, and then continue in the mirrored fashion, I would expect a rejection off of somewhere around the $16 area, and then start working our way back downside to an eventual second bottom over here somewhere. So that is what I am looking at for a potential bearish setup and scenario moving into tomorrow and the rest of this week. GME, the current macro comparative for GME is from the previous next door bottom over here, and this is where it is currently at. Within that, you can see the previous projection and fulfillment out of it, and the potential projection moving forward if it were to go continuation upside. My macro thirds are sitting out here waiting for it. There's two of them. If price action were to go to the upside, excuse me, I would expect maybe, well, we've already got the resistance off of the mid time frame third. The macro third would be up here somewhere between the 180 and 190 area, and that's where I would expect a rejection with price action back to the downside if it were to continue to the upside. And that is looking at that previous bottom in a mirrored position. Looking at it in the straight up position. Looks like this. Just basically a clip and moving it over here, as if it would replicate that bottom in its entirety without any kind of inverted mirrorings or flipping of the algos to bullish bearish at all. If they ran it exactly the same as they did in that previous bottom, this is the previous projection and fulfillment, along with the fulfillment to the upside of the macro comparative in this position. And you can see the movement throughout it if it were to continue. This, in this scenario, realizes this mid time frame third for the next box top and breakdown to the downside for the next bottom, subsequent bottom for this macro double that I've had framed in here on GME for quite some time, if it were to continue to fulfill in that manner. So those are the two potential, I guess the first one's here, a short-term upside and then downside, but we got a couple weeks worth before it would do that. But the immediate upside would be in the mirrored position. Now, the current snakes on GME. The snake from last week that gave 100% and the week before. Projection and fulfillment to the upside is right here, how you see it. Now, it appears to be potentially fulfilled in its entirety and expired currently. So I went ahead and clipped what could potentially be one of the next snakes. Now, this is initial placement, and initial placement, unless I have a little more price action as far as data to show me a definitive direction or a definitive structure to be able to place this accurately, it's just a guess at this point. You can see here, I can put it directly on it, and you can see what the projection and fulfillment would be from that one. Or if I overlap it 2 days instead of 1 day, you can see that would be immediate downside going into tomorrow. So that will be the difference as far as this potential day of divergence. snake, intra-week snake moving forward. If it is in this position, I would expect upside tomorrow. If it's going to be in this position, I would expect immediate downside tomorrow. So that will be what determines the placement for that for me moving forward. And then there's the day prior to divergence with a 1-day overlap, and that puts it right there about. And the indication from that in that position would be immediate downside, and then consolidation, what looks and appears to be throughout at least all of this week. So that is what I am looking at potentially for these new snakes on intra-week snakes on GME moving forward into tomorrow and beyond. Then last but not least, SPY. The current snake on SPY was clipped last week after we diverted from the previous 4-week projection and fulfillment intra-week snake, and I clipped and placed this with an overlap into the second portion of this W, and we got the projection and fulfillment to the upside up out of this, and that is what it currently looks like, and I feel good about its placement. If price action were to continue to fulfill in this current placement, that is what I am looking at from the current intra-week snake. The macro comparative for SPY is from the 08-09 correction and crash, and it is in what I have called the extended version. I have had this on here since I started the channel back in December. You can see the projected suggested path that it has given since back in June of last year. Just this portion of the clip in its entirety, it has followed that path. There have been a couple invert mirrorings throughout it, but it's been a projected path, and it has fulfilled that path a year now in its entirety. So if price action were to continue to fulfill this in this placement, I would expect some consolidation, what appears to be throughout this week. And then if and when we get that, we'll be looking at, next week for this to be a potential critical point for this to break downside or potentially upside if and when we get this consolidation. Now, it's a ton of volatility. What it appears to be to me is a ton of volatility throughout the week. So, but nonetheless, you can see it is a midline volatility projection from the macro comparative in this position. If it does anything other than that, I will be reevaluating the positioning of this. As you know, some of you know, I have and have had what I've called the long-term version of this same macro comparative. It extends the crash out quite a ways. That is something that I may have to bring back out and look at with you if this price action does not continue to fulfill the suggested path of the current macro comparative in this placement. Then last but not least, I had shown you this thing here. This is what I've called the cuckoo cachoo, just meaning it's batshit crazy macro comparative, and this is running it from crash to crash. So this is clipping from the 08-09 correction and crash and until the 2019 and 20 top prior to the 2020 bottom, and then placing it at the 2020 bottom onto current. And what this shows moving out in its entirety into the future would be this bullish move to the upside and a run, an ungodly run to all-time highs. I've said this before, I think it would be crazier for this thing to finish out the crash than it would be to do something like this. However, and keep in mind, this is a weekly clip. So these are weekly candles, meaning a week worth of price action in between each two candles. I talked to you all the last couple weeks when I've shown you this in the weeklies, and we have gotten that move. I said about this W fulfilling, breaking the neckline of the W, which you all know I love playing neckline breaks, and I did. And this continuing to the upside in a heavy manner, and that's what we've got. I mean, literally a straight shot to the upside. Things are going to get pretty critical right here this week in determining whether or not price action could potentially be following this suggested path of that weekly macro comparative, or if it could potentially fulfill this consolidation, this midline consolidation and volatility, and potentially be fulfilling the crash of the 08-09 macro comparative. Sorry, I'm having a hard time talking. So if and when we get out here this week, I think we'll be able to determine which, if any, that price action would be following. But here you go. I mean, it's on the table. Here's the W formation in the weekly macro comparative from crash to crash. And there is the macro double that we just came out of, and we are now moving upside. So that is what I am looking at in its entirety with SPY, with GME, and with AMC going into tomorrow, this week, and potentially beyond. So I hope you had a great weekend. I hope you enjoyed the extra time off. Good luck in the markets tomorrow. Get yourself some extreme gains. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday afternoon and evening. And I will talk to you all tomorrow evening after market close in the update and prep video tomorrow night. Talk to you then. Enjoy your day. Later.